From Keene in the Shire, the Liberty Media capital of the world, this is Daryl W. Perry, host of FPP Radio News for Friday, August 22nd, 2014. Silver is trading at $19.49 per ounce. Gold is valued at $1,279 per ounce. And according to BitcoinAverage.com, the average price of Bitcoin is $510. Antiwar.com reports Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel laid out a particularly hysterical view of the ISIS threat, insisting they posed a threat to literally every national interest the U.S. has everywhere, and that the U.S. has to prepare for everything in the latest war. It isn't hard to see where that viewpoint came from, as other Pentagon officials talking about ISIS are showing a similarly alarming perspective as they continue to push the administration for escalations of the war. Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Martin Dempsey presented ISIS as an apocalyptic opponent that can only be tackled militarily and pushed for the U.S. to expand the Iraq War into neighboring Syria, saying that's the only way to contain ISIS. When pressed on the U.S. escalating the war into Syria, Hagel was evasive, insisting only that ISIS continues to explore all options in their newest war. In the near term, this is likely to mean mostly an increase in the current air war inside Iraq, as CENTCOM is pushing particularly hard for the U.S. to greatly expand its target list to allow the large number of warplanes already attacking Iraq to hit many more targets. The State Department has already chimed in with a request for another 300 ground troops in Baghdad, and further ground operations have already been reported to be in the works for the Anbar province along the border with Syria. Actually escalating the war into Syria itself will be a huge step, and it may well be the revelation of the failed rescue mission in Syria was part of a campaign to widen expectations for the war's eventual scope, giving officials the ability to argue the U.S. already added Syria to the war long ago. FPP Radio News is brought to you by Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. For over 35 years, Roberts & Roberts has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They now take Bitcoin for purchasing precious metals so you can turn your profits into a long-term investment. Call Roberts & Roberts today for knowledgeable advice on investing. 800-874-9760. The French news service AFP reports the Australian tax office said cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin should not be considered as money or foreign currency when it comes to taxation. Instead, Bitcoins are a form of property. The decision follows a similar move by the IRS in March. The Australian Tax Office said in its guidance, transacting with Bitcoins is akin to a barter arrangement. The ATO's view is that Bitcoin is neither money nor a foreign currency, and the supply of Bitcoin is not a financial supply for goods and services tax purposes. Bitcoin is, however, an asset for capital gains tax purposes. The move disappointed the Australian digital currency industry, which said treating the supply of Bitcoins the same way as the exchange of a commodity meant that it would be subject to a 10% goods and services tax. Ron Tucker from the Australian Digital Currency Commerce Association said the move could send industry innovation overseas to places such as Singapore and Hong Kong. During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davi Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. The New York Times reports, a poll taken since a white police officer in Missouri shot dead an unarmed black teenager shows blacks and whites sharply divided on how fairly the police deal with each group, along with a rising feeling, especially among whites, that race relations in the country are troubled. The latest New York Times CBS nationwide poll shows that most white respondents reserved judgment on whether the fatal shooting of Michael Brown was justified. Most black respondents say it was not. The poll does show consensus that the military-style equipment used by the police in Ferguson should not be in the officers' hands. 2/3 of all Americans surveyed said assault rifles and tanks should be reserved for the military and National Guard. One respondent said, "There are too many people on the police force who act without thinking, and they shouldn't have access to assault weapons." This has been FPP Radio News, online at fppradio.com.